project is probably more likely to get funded if it cascades down to the division tier, depending, since we're talking about a small amount of funding availability. But yeah, I mean, I think we should probably flex that 500 points to the regional tier again this round and see where that gets us. And we can get into the nitty-gritty here once we get the scores.
Looking for recommendation for board adoption.
So moved.
Moved by Ellen,
Second.
second by Paul, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thanks, Colin. That we're up to the fiscal year 2026 to 2035, amendment number 2. Matt, come on.
So we can talk about our issues and let's see.
Okay.
Just a quick overview of it. So it has all the projects in state that are already funded. And it supports the schedules and where things are needed as we're in this. So on this amendment, we have one new project, 4 bus stops being approved, and it's one by Triangle, and several other updates on the existing projects. The only change from when this was first introduced in January would be the 2 projects that were awarded community project funds. Chapel Hill was awarded $1 million for the side path, and Triangle was awarded $2 million for the hub. In addition to those, there's the item and handouts that come since then, so in March. This did go up to comment about it. We did not receive any comments, so the first action is to request for the board to approve our amendment. Any questions on the amendment?
Looking for a motion for board approval. Recommend board approval.
So moved.
Moved by Aaron. Second by John, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thanks. With that, we are through action items on the informational items. First informational item is Triangle Bikeway update, and that's David, Kara, and Chris.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Miller, and I'm a transportation planner with Triangle West. We are joined by Kara Russell from Campo and Chris Lawson from Central Pines, and we'll be providing an update on the Triangle Bikeway project. It's been a little while since we provided an update to this group, but there are some timely updates that Campo would like to share about their design project. And the action for this item is to receive the presentation and provide feedback. So here is our agenda for this item. We will share a background of the Triangle Bikeway for those who may be unfamiliar, and share updates for Campo's design project. I will share updates for Triangle West, and then Chris will do the same for Central Pines. All right, so to get us started, I will pass it over to Kara to get us into a background and lead us into Campo's updates.
Thank you, David, and thank you all for having me here today. It's been a little bit, so I'm very excited to be with you all. I'm going to go over a little bit of the history. I know it's had a long one, and so just good context setting for those who've been hearing about the project recently, but also as a little bit of a refresher of where it's been. All right, so I'll get started. I know this group knows what is the Triangle Bikeway. This is looking at a bike commuter facility that would connect all the way in completion from Chapel Hill to Raleigh. And so the most recent of this effort that was conducted, the project has been around for about 2 decades, was the Triangle Bikeway feasibility and implementation study. This was adopted by both TPO and Campo boards in 2022, and that had looked at the entire alignment, looking at all the different options throughout this facility to connect all of our communities in the region. And so that plan is currently residing on trianglebikeway.com. It has all the information about public engagement that was conducted, some of the conceptual plans for part of the project, as well as some different approaches to how to implement a project of this size across multiple jurisdictions, counties, and divisions at DOT. What it also provided for us today was some really good design guidance for consistency across the region. So looking at a 16-foot path where possible with some pedestrian accommodation on the side, as well as some different typical sections as the corridor touches down more to our local communities. So you'll notice some of the cross sections look a little different where it runs along 40. But as we step down to places like RTP where we want to have those connections, and there might be some right-of-way constraints to be pushed down to a smaller facility as well. All right, so now I get to where we are today and some of the steps that are being taken to implement this project. So in 2024, Research Triangle Foundation and Wake County partnered together for this vision of starting to take the first bite of the apple. Still a really big bite of the apple. It's about 14 miles of the overall 25 miles of the corridor, but it's looking to start to advance the project into the design phase. And so in that effort, Campo was asked to manage this design phase of the process to get it as far along as we can in order to get it prepared for construction, get it prepared for future funding opportunities, etc. We also have a great partnership with NCDOT and all of our jurisdictions that are being involved, some of the work that's being done to get this ready. So I'll do a little bit of a zoom out first for our region together, just for context setting. The project does not exist in a vacuum. I think that's the beauty of the big selling point of the project is that it is a direct path for commuters to get to and from where they're going quicker, but it also connects into our larger system of bike and pedestrian networks across the region. So I know this looks like spaghetti. This is our most recent, which now is adopted, MTP. That looks at all of our bike and pedestrian facilities that are on the ground today, as well as those that are being planned for to be built out in the future. So I'm going to highlight a few that we all know and love, and where that relates to the area. So these, you can think about it as our north-south connectors and our east-west connectors, high quality, high capacity corridors. And then that green line is the overall alignment of how that connects into this larger system of active corridors across the region. We also know in this area there's a lot to celebrate. Since I'm doing the update on the east side, I've got all our east highlights, but I can make a very exciting side for the west side as well. I know there's a lot of great things happening and coming online. There's a lot of investments happening, transit investments, connections to our local systems, our local parks, our state parks, a lot of our major entertainment centers, employment centers, and things of that nature. So when we think about connecting these places and giving opportunity for mode choice across the region, not just for the whole corridor, but how it connects and feeds into the other parts is a very exciting venture. So again, we split the project for independent utility. We thought about that as well. Both sides of this project could operate within independent utilities. So if future federal dollars are applied for, both would be very compelling projects on their own right, but even more exciting to think about again. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of an update of where we've been on the design side on the east end. We started off with a site visit in 2024. So it is pretty incredible, as we all know, the growth that we're seeing in the region. So even from the adoption of the feasibility study in 2022 to today in 2024, there's been some changes that we're seeing in real time before our very eyes. So we got our eyes on the ground, started to look at what's happening in the area, and then set out to do some preliminary surveying and start to come up with some alternatives that were left open from the feasibility implementation study. You'll notice on this map here, this is the alignment that was adopted, and there's some, it's really tiny, I'm sorry. There were some options left open from that study. And so you'll notice today, when looking at developing some of these alternatives, we wanted to make sure we got it right. We want to make sure that we're thinking about all of the development that's coming online and how this project connects to it. And so we just finished off our public information sessions that were on these alternatives. We went out and asked folks for information, and we're still asking for information before we step into that next part, which is taking the one final alignment and moving it to 30% design completion. We've also started some activities on the NEPA related documentation. We know should there be any federal funds applied to the project for construction, that would be a requirement, so we're going ahead and doing some of that work. It's also just really good information to have anyway, so we're going ahead and doing that, as well as the ongoing capital project coordination. Make sure, again, we're thinking about some of those larger projects coming online and lifting it. So our schedule moving forward, we've just wrapped up the public information at the end of February, and we are looking to start moving towards getting that final alignment endorsed, so that way we're authorized to go to 30% completion. All right, just a little bit of information. Again, we just wrapped up about a week or two ago, so we're still processing all of the feedback that we've received. We had very good participation, and folks are going out for the next time we come to get a copy. Some really good attendance at pop-ups. We've had folks from across the region I've been with personally, very excited about the project, very interested. And very engaged. We've got very good feedback and participation from folks who actually live and commute within that 5-mile buffer of the corridor, what we're seeing so far. And then today we've also got, just in case you haven't received them yet, or you still need some more, you need a refresher or refill, we've got them on the back counter. So if you've got questions from folks about what's going on the other end, all that information is there for you, and it should be good evergreen information as we go and move forward. So with that, I will end my portion of the update and hand it over to David.
Thank you, Kara. So getting into updates for Triangle West, I wanted to start by just showing the conceptual alignments in our area that was identified in the 2022 feasibility and implementation study. So essentially about 13.5 miles from the Wake County border through City of Durham and RTP, hitting NC 54 into Chapel Hill, so largely following I-40 and NC 54. It is important to note that about 4 miles of the Triangle Bikeway in our NPO area is actually part of Campo's design project. Just want to point that out. All right, so getting into updates, Triangle West staff did submit a 1-mile portion of the bikeway to spot P8, the 1-mile segment between NC 54 and NC 55 along I-40. As we just discussed, we have not received the scores for project submittals yet. The NC 54 corridor improvement project also recently kicked off after being paused, I believe, in 2019. And this project is important for the Triangle Bikeway because it was identified in the feasibility and implementation study as a way to construct a bikeway along this section of NC 54, which aligns with U5774. I know that there was a kickoff meeting for the restarting of that project in January, and many Triangle West staff, and I believe some folks here in this room attended that meeting, and we look forward to continuing to be engaged to see how the bikeway could be incorporated into that project. Triangle West is also a member of the Bikeway's Regional Advisory Committee, which Chris will touch on here in a moment. We are also a partner on Campo's design project. And then finally, the recently adopted 2055 NTP, our long-range transportation plan that we develop and adopt with capital area NPO, does have a Triangle Bikeway in there, and it does state that development of the bikeway is a regional goal. So looking ahead to potential next steps, I added the next steps for Triangle West that are found in the action plan portion of the 2022 study. And it is essentially guiding Triangle West to get to where Campo is now. So looking at 30% design and beyond. And then if you look further out, developing construction and funding strategies. But as we're thinking about next steps for Triangle West, in addition to the updates that I just shared, I might recommend that we just continue to be a partner with Campo on their design project, learn about their processes, and incorporate those into our own when our TC and board direct us to move forward. All right, so I will pass it over to Chris to share some updates for Central Pines.
Awesome, thanks, Dave. Hey, everybody, I'm Chris Lawson, I'm Program Manager with Central Pines. And so our role in this is because we cover both east and the west sections. So starting top to bottom, basically what we've done is maintain the Triangle Bikeway website. And this, you can direct folks to it for general information, history of the project, feasibility study. And there's a link to submit questions, and that's probably the most active part of the website. And so we get a good number of questions, and almost all of them are, when is it being built? That's the question. So I don't have like a good solid time frame for them, but we get a lot of questions about what's being built. So it seems like there's a lot of excitement in the area. Next is we lead the Regional Advisory Committee. Basically, it's a quarterly committee we facilitate. At our first meeting in February this year, our first meeting of the year, we asked the committee for feedback on kind of what they want to see for the rest of the year, what kind of items to discuss. Got a lot of really good feedback. I think the highlight of which is one of our other partners, the Triangle Trails Initiative, is going to try to get advocacy groups and maybe some elected officials out to other bikeways in the state and do a site visit and just try to build more excitement for it, build awareness of it. And then in November, we're going to have our first truly in-person meeting, which we talk about the site visit, hopefully get more excitement and awareness, and then maybe celebrate how far the bikeways come this far. So finally, Central Pines has a nonprofit organization which could serve as some kind of funding mechanism in the future. That's all I have about that right now. So still figuring that part out. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Chris. All right, so the action for this information item is to receive the presentation. We also welcome any questions and discussion. I will mention that we will be bringing this to the board in April rather than March due to presenter scheduling conflict. We just wanted to point that out, that we will be bringing it to the board in April. All right, so we're happy to take any questions you have, and we appreciate your time.
Good question. Apologies if I missed it. For those 3 steps that you outlined for the western section, what's the timeline on those?
Well, according to the action plan itself, in the feasibility implementation study, we've already passed those dates. So we have to make new ones. Okay. What's the plan? How does that happen? Like, how do we get to 30% design? Like, what needs to happen in order to start moving things along? Yeah, well, I think we can learn a lot from Kara and Campo about how they started. It sounded like there was interest by some partners, RTF and Wake County, to put funding together to move forward. So the way the original study was funded, at least from the Triangle West side, I can't speak for Campo, was funding through our UPWP, and that could allow up to 10% design. Going beyond that, I understand, would have to be some other funding source besides our usual UPWP process. So that funding would have to be identified, and there'd have to be obviously interest from our TCN board to want us to move forward, and we'd have to figure out where those funds would come from. If it were to potentially come from the RFF, for example, who would be the entity that would submit something like that? It's a good question. I think I don't really have a good answer. I think we'd all have to decide as a group, and I think there might have been some similar conversations on the Campo side about who would submit things and who would kind of manage it. And I think, yeah, I don't have a good answer for it right now.
Share some information on this side.
Sure.
So I think, this is probably not the typical process for how you get a project through design. Having an NPO manage the design is really unique. But on this end, I think the decision was that, to do it piecemeal and part by part may not make sense just because there's only about a mile for each jurisdiction, and so trying to do that all together. So that was a decision on the this side, but it could really look different on the other potentially, if, money were to come forward tomorrow and be applied, that can run in parallel with the other side. Could be going on, and so there's some possibilities of having
And apologies if I missed this, Kara, for the 13, 14 mile side, for 30% design, you know a ballpark figure for the cost of that 30% design? Just so we can kind of get a sense as to what, we're talking
Should
about.
you pay?
Yeah. How much do we have in the RFF this year?
Not, I mean,
Was that?
Feldman has the number 20.
Oh, that was
30 for all years.
I'm sorry, I did misspeak.
Okay.
That 5 million is from 0 to 50% delay.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
we're looking at more than 1 to 3.
So it won't,
Maybe
it
more-
wouldn't eat up the whole. But it would be significant.
It would be.
And the local match is being paid for by Wake County and RFP, right?
Yeah, and currently there's no federal funding on the project. So the 90% design is
Oh.
exclusively Wake County and RTF funding. There's no federal money in the project yet.
Oh, okay.
We're preparing the construction funding to
And Wake County had a Greenway bond or something that I think raised money.
the exact station of
So is there any kind of local municipality match for the funding on your guys' end? What about maintenance? Is there any idea on funding and obligations for maintenance?
Right now, we are in discussion with a senior staff level to try to come up with some different options to look at that long term. We know that, should there be a construction offer identified and funding source identified, so we have to be thinking about how to find that mechanism for that. So we looked at a couple of different options, but that was something we would have to go in with the decision makers to decide on what route and how to direct us in. So it could be some sort of public-private partnership, or it could be some municipal service district, it could be, there's a lot of different paths you could go. Something further, to look at that long term.
So on the east end, or excuse me, west end, have we started looking at that at all?
We have not, so the folks in the west end, some of us are part of the committees that Campo and Kara are organizing. Lake City has representation there. We do meet in that regional advisory committee capacity to talk about these things. But we haven't formally come together and, worked it all out yet. But we're happy to do so if we're directed to.
Is that western alignment that was along 54?
Mm-hmm. There it is.
Yeah, that's nice. That ties right into the multi-use path for the north-south bus rapid transit at the end there, and which also connects out to Carborough through the Morgan Creek Greenway right down on the south end there.
That was actually going to be a question of mine. I just want to make sure that any design at the west end does have some sort of connection to the Morgan Creek Greenway, because that would bring it into Carcraft.
Anyone else? Wonderful, thank you all. We're on to memorandum of understanding.
All right. Yesterday, the chair's subcommittee on the MOU update met, and we primarily discussed three different things. One is the quorum percentage and vote percentage weights for the communities. Second was having a transit operator subcommittee, which we decided we would meet. We would propose a subcommittee of the TC meeting quarterly would be a good first step. And then we heard comments back from members about the number of representatives they would like to have at the meeting. And this is a pretty significant part of our section. Did I miss anything, Eric?
No, I just want to add that as far as the voting structure goes, the quorum and voting procedures, we haven't quite come to a consensus yet. The TPO is working on something and they're going to send it out for review. So stay tuned on that. But we were able to make a lot of progress on some of the items. So I feel good overall.
Well, I think the consensus we did reach on, so you informed that no one member carry a vote. So we would still move forward with matching that. It would take those two members to carry a vote through. Right.
Yeah, not one member yet, but
More than that.
yeah, we didn't come up with the numbers that are gonna, exactly.
Right. We don't have the mechanics.
Yeah. Thanks. That brings us to recent news articles and updates. See the agenda if you're interested. Next meeting is Tuesday, April 7th, and with that, for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Becca.
Second.
Second by Aaron, all in favor.
Aye.
See y'all next month.
Less than.
Is that a record?
Normal.
Normal.
Yeah.